these are the three most popular gimbals that I get so many of you guys asking about. The Feiyutech G6 Max, the Zhiyun Crane M3 and the M2S. All three more or less handle a similar payload. They more or less operate the same way, but there are very strong difference between all of them. So, if you're in the market for a smartphone gimbal, which one comes on top? The most important feature when you look for a new gimbal is to make sure that you have no restrictions of movement whatsoever. You can get lost in semantics, in gimmicky features, in small details, but the bottom line is you want to make sure that you have a gimbal that has no restrictions of movement whatsoever. These three gimbals give you that. And even though they look very similar, they have different payloads and they do it in a very different way. So in terms of balancing, this is not rocket science, okay? All gimbals do it in pretty much the same way, okay? Now, there are some serious differences here that you need to be aware of, okay? So this is the Zhiyun Crane M2S, okay? This is a recent gimbal. It's been out for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks maybe, by the time I'm filming this video. And it's very similar to the Crane M3, okay? As you can clearly see here, very, very similar. However, the most important aspect that you need to pay attention with this gimbal is the length of this roll bar, okay? This bar on the M2S is shorter than on the Crane M3. And this is why this gimbal is $269 and this is $369. It's in the small detail and the features that you can tell the difference, okay? But there are some substantial difference here, okay? When you balance a smartphone, the amount of accessories that you put on the lens is very different, and you might find yourself in a situation where if you add a filter and a lens, the M2S can handle it. It can just about handle a phone, a case and a filter, whereas the Crane M3, you don't have to worry about any of that because the extra length on the roll axis bar gives you the ability of compensating for the additional weight at the top, and you can easily balance. Now the Feiyutech G6 Max balances in pretty much the same way. This is not rocket science, so the gimbals balance pretty much all the same way. The challenge that we have with this gimbal is this base plate, okay? Because this latch here, if you drag the gimbal all the way down, it touches the roll axis bar. So that means that you need to kind of raise it a little bit, and that might affect the balancing of certain smartphones, especially when you add accessories. But the roll axis bar is long enough, so you don't really have to worry about issues as you do with the M2S. Now, in terms of restriction of movement, you don't have to worry about any of it with these three gimbals, okay? So you can do any shot that you can think of. You don't have to worry about any of it, okay? There are some differences in the amount of accessories and how you mount the phone, whether it's upright or upside down. But in terms of the actual restrictions of movement, you don't have any. Now, saying this, if you were to use a large case like this one, like the small rig, if you were to mount this case on the Feiyutech G6 Max upside down, you might find yourself that you are touching the roll axis bar. So in order to compensate for that, you might need to remove the rubber teeth that are inside the mount, okay? And by doing that, you reduce the footprint of the case and the mount itself, and then you can clear the roll axis bar when you go from down, up, or up, down. Now, the same applies to the Zhiyun gimbals, okay? You have the same problem. It's not as acute as with the Feiyutech G6 Max, but it's the same. But in terms of restriction of movement, any of these three gimbals give you no restrictions whatsoever, and that's really nice. Now, in terms of gimbal modes, all three gimbals give you pretty much the same. Feiyutech calls some modes in a certain way, Zhiyun calls them in a different way, but essentially they're all the same. Okay, so you get your pan follow, your full lock follow, vortex, POV, and go or sports mode. Okay, so you access them in a different way. Naturally, they're all different gimbals, but essentially they're all the same. Now, in terms of manual adjustments, this is where you start to notice the difference between each of these gimbals, okay? Now, the Feiyutech G6 Max and the Zhiyun Crane M3, They give you a lot of manual adjustments, and you have an LCD screen here that you can easily adjust anything that you can think of, okay? So in that regard, these two are far better than the Crane M2, okay? In a way, in terms of manual adjustments, the better user experience is with the Crane M3, okay? The G6 Max gives you pretty much the same, but you don't have some of the fancy functionality that you get with the Crane M3. Now, one feature that I really like on the G6 Max that you don't have neither on the Crane M3 or the M2S is this jog wheel here, because you can adjust the joystick just as you can on the Crane M3 and the M2S. But this jog wheel is really nice because ergonomically it sits right where your thumb is, so you can map it to pan, tilt or roll, and it's really nice and smooth. And you can obviously adjust those settings, whether you want it to be really smooth or a lot quicker, because there might be instances where you just want that tiny movement, whether it's up, down, sideways or roll, and you don't want to be worrying about whether the joystick is too aggressive on the movement, because even though you set them to slow movement, they never really slow, okay? So for instance, if you're doing sports, that doesn't really matter because you need to follow the action really quickly. But if you're doing something that is a little bit more storyline or dramatic, like a short film or something that looks really cinematic, it's all about moving slowly, okay? So sometimes these joysticks can be a little bit too fast or too aggressive, whereas this jog wheel here is really, really nice and smooth, okay? Plus, if you hold it with your finger, you can't really go too fast. So that's really, really nice here, okay? Now, the Crane M3 gives you so many adjustments as well. There is one thing that is really nice on the Crane M3 is that you can actually have a display that tells you whether any of the axes is off alignment, and you can even adjust it on the fly, okay? And that's really, really nice. You don't get that with the G6 Max, you get it with the Crane M3. Now, with the M2S, this is like a stripped down version of the Crane M3. It looks the part, but there are some limitations. You have very few adjustments on this gimbal. Sometimes having those extra features to help you on a particular shot make a big difference, okay? So in terms of manual adjustments, I personally think the Crane M3 and the G6 Max are far superior than the M2S. I personally think one of the best uses for a gimbal is time lapses, because you can do a nice time lapse in a camera fixed on a tripod, but it's always going to be a lot nicer if you introduce movement in that time lapse, whether it's panning left to right or tilting up and down or both motions at the same time. If you introduce motion in a time lapse, it's always going to look that much nicer. Now, these three gimbals give you the ability to do time lapses. However, at the time of filming, which is early April 2022, the Crane M2S has a serious problem with software integration and time lapses don't work, okay? You can adjust the time interval, but you cannot adjust the duration of the time lapse. It's locked at 30 seconds, which means that you cannot really do any time lapses, because when you do a time lapse, you want it to go on for half an hour, 2 hours, or even longer, okay? So we rule out the M2S at this moment in time. I am sure Zhiyun will work out what the issue is with the software, and it will eventually be just as good as the Crane M3, okay? Now, these two gimbals, the Feiyutech G6 Max and the Crane M3, give you the ability to do time lapses, and you get some really nice results. Now, with the Crane M3, you have an infinitely better integration between the phone, the gimbal, and the app. The Feiyutech G6 Max, the app is nowhere near as good as the Zhiyun app, okay? So with the Crane M3, time lapses are really nice and easy to set up, and the little jog wheel that you got here allows you to accurately move the gimbal and set it exactly where you want it to be. The G6 Max, on the other hand, the integration with the app is not as good as the Crane M3. The advantage that you get with the G6 Max is that you can set your in and out points and do the time lapse on the gimbal itself without having to go into the app, which is not something that you can do with the Crane M3. You genuinely need to go onto the app and do everything in app. With the G6 Max, you can set on the settings of the app or the gimbal how long you want that time lapse to be, whether it is 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, however long. And then you can set your in and out points on the gimbal itself. So this is a lot quicker, okay? Especially if you move around and you want to do a one time lapse here and then there and then there. The downside of that is you have to manually adjust the gimbal and set your start and end point. Now, I wish Feiyutech had released a firmware upgrade that would allow the joystick to control the gimbal as you set your in and out points. But you know, you're stuck to do it manually. Now, the plus side of that is that you can set your gimbal to do a time lapse for say 15 seconds, for instance, and you set manually, let's say that you want to record yourself walking sideways, okay? So you can set the gimbal to start right and then left, pan for 15 seconds, and you can record yourself if you're a solo filmmaker, okay, or content creator, or tilting up and down if you say walk down the stairs, okay? So this is something that you cannot do with the Crane M3. A time lapse is genuinely a time lapse, okay? So here you get that sort of leeway that you can do a time lapse, or you can sort of record yourself, you know, and then you time yourself. But I still think the Crane M3 comes on top because that integration is really, really nicely done. These three gimbals are what I would consider lightweight, okay? To me, it makes no difference whether the gimbal weighs 700 grams, 650, 550, or 500, whatever. This is all very, very lightweight. Nowhere near a professional rig that weighs considerably more, and you can't really hold it for more than 10-15 minutes without your back breaking, okay? These gimbals, I can hold these two for hours. My arms are not gonna fall off. Try and hold a professional gimbal for more than 20 minutes, half an hour, and trust me, you'll be going to the chiropractor to fix your back, okay? So with that out of the way, payload. These are three different payloads, okay? So the Crane M3 takes 2.2 kilos, the G6 Max 1.2 kilos, and this one takes just a little bit under 2 kilos, okay? Now I am on metric system. You translate that into whatever system you work, but essentially you don't have to worry about any accessories that you mount on these two gimbals, okay? On this gimbal, the M2S, you have to worry about it because not so much the payload, but because the roll axis bar is shorter than on the M3, you cannot really balance anything other than a phone, a case, and a filter. And that is if you can do that, depending on the weight of your phone case. But this is to me a real problem because whatever payload this gimbal can handle, it gets sort of cheated because of the fact that you cannot really balance a smartphone with some accessories. You need to balance it upside down. I don't think this gimbal is very well designed in that regard, okay? Now, these two gimbals, 2.2 kilos, 1.2 kilos, okay? In the land of smartphones, okay, you should never have to worry about hitting 1 kilo payload on a gimbal on a smartphone, okay? That would just be insane, okay? A phone, a case, a lens, and a filter is never gonna weigh more than 450, 500 grams. The one thing that you really need to worry about more than the actual payload is the way that load is distributed when you mount the phone on a gimbal. So for instance, if you use a phone with a lens and a filter, it is going to be top heavy. My advice, and the way I use it, is the moment you use a phone with a lens and a filter, or just the lens, mount it upside down. You'll be able to balance it a lot quicker and it will operate a lot better. But in terms of payload, raw payload as it is, the Crane M3 takes the winning hand here because at 2.2 kilos, it's a lot more than the 1.2 on the Feiyutech G6 Max. However, will you ever pile up 1.2 kilos payload in this gimbal? Not really. In terms of the camera app, the Zhiyun camera app is miles ahead of the Feiyutech. To me, the Feiyutech app feels to me like an afterthought, something that wasn't really well designed from the word go, okay? So to me, this gimbal is pretty much a manual gimbal. I only access the app on the settings side when I want to adjust maybe the speed of the joystick or some setting on the gimbal. I use Filmic Pro, a third-party app, and I am very happy with it, okay? With the Zhiyun side of the business, the app is actually a useful app. You can film with the app. You may not have the same level of features that you have with a third-party app like Filmic Pro, ProTake, or whatever floats your boat, but the app is decent and you can use it, okay? So in that regard, the Zhiyun, whether it's the M2S or the Crane M3, are far superior than the Feiyutech. Now, in terms of user experience, these three gimbals are nice to use, but the experience is very different, okay? Now, first and foremost, once the phone is balanced, the user experience in that regard is very similar, okay? You don't have any restrictions of movement, and the way you handle the gimbal is very similar, okay? So all three gimbals are a joy to use, okay? Now, how you get to that is very different, okay? Now, the M2S, to me, feels like a beginner's gimbal. It's extremely basic. The menu options are very limited. You don't have as good experience as with the Crane M3. Now, naturally, we're talking about $100 price difference, so that's gotta be noticed somewhere. The Crane M3 gives you so many more options. The LCD screen is phenomenal. I love the section where you can see the different axes or motors, whether one of them is off or slightly off. To me, that alone is worth a lot of money, okay? Because you can clearly see whether you got the balancing right or not. Now, the Crane M3 to me is the better of these two gimbals in terms of the user experience, okay? Now, we're assuming that the M2S, as I said, is a beginner's gimbal, okay? It's nowhere near as good as any of these two, okay? Not so much using the gimbal, as I said, once the phone is balanced, but how you get to it, okay? Now, the Crane M3 is really nice, okay? You get lots of features. You can set up a lot of things manually on the gimbal itself, but if you need to go into the app, it's really nice and smooth. The process is really nicely done, okay? Now, the Feiyutech G6 Max, this is a gimbal that you use manually mostly. You use with a third-party app like Filmic Pro, ProTake, and anything and everything that you need to do, you can adjust it on the gimbal itself. I don't think I have ever used the Feiyutech app other than to access some menu settings or firmware update or time lapses, okay, to change the duration of the time lapse. But other than that, everything that I do on this gimbal, I do it on the gimbal itself, and I use Filmic Pro, okay? So I'm used to this, but I love this. As a raw user experience, the Crane M3 is better than the G6 Max, but if you value manual adjustments on a third-party app, the G6 Max is as good as the Crane M3. So it's a bit of a toss here. Some people will say, are you mad? The Crane M3 is infinitely better. Again, it's down to what works for each particular person. To me, because of the setup that I do, I can work with either one of these two gimbals. I'm used to the G6 Max. I've used the Crane M3 a few times. It's a really nice gimbal. I don't know. If you give me these two gimbals, I would be very happy to use either one of them. Now, the difference is that this is $269, $259, this is $369, so it's an extra $100. Now, I can see where the $100 difference goes, okay? You get a much more streamlined integration between the gimbal, the buttons. I love the section on the LCD that shows you where there is an axis or a motor that is slightly off. That, to me, is worth the $100 difference, you know, because sometimes you might get a gimbal that you just get about 80, 85, 90%, and you think that you are right, and then suddenly you find out that it doesn't operate well because there is a motor or an axis that is not well balanced, and then you need to do auto calibration and change the motor's tension, and it's all down to not having a gimbal well calibrated. Whereas here you can easily look at it, you know, at a glance, you know. So I still think the user experience, I've been using the G6 Max for 1.5 years, 2 years. I'm recommending people to use it. It pains me to say this, but the user experience on the Crane M3 is really nice if you value the integration with the software. But if what you want is quick and dirty, easy to adjust gimbal to work with a third-party app. The G6 Max, it's really nice. So I can't really say which one is better, really. Oh, let's leave it like that. So which one is the better gimbal or the best gimbal for smartphones? Okay, so Crane M2S, absolutely no chance. Okay, this gimbal, this gimbal, it's extremely basic. Okay, now you might be thinking, oh, but it looks very similar to the Crane M3 and is $100 cheaper. The M2S costs $10 or $20 more than the G6 Max. You're gonna get so much more out of the G6 Max than you're gonna get out of the M2S. To me, a massive flaw is the roll axis bar that is short, but there are issues with the LCD screen and a number of issues that I mentioned in my review. Feel free to view it. I'll put a link somewhere in the screen, somewhere there. I do not recommend the M2S. They just call it for what it is. The G6 Max and the Crane M3. To me, these two gimbals are good gimbals, okay? I cannot tell you which gimbal is better than the other one because this is down to personal taste, okay? Some people will prefer the Zhiyun because, you know what, they have a base in the US and in Europe, and if there is a problem, I can send it somewhere. The Feiyutech in Europe or in the UK, you have a place that you can send it to and repair it, but if not, you might need to send it to China. So some people will value that side of the customer support experience. Some people will love the LCD screen with all the settings, shows you where every motor is well balanced or not, and the integration with the app. Some people will value that. Some people will say, look, I couldn't care less about any of that. I just want a gimbal that is $100 cheaper. This is newer, so everything feels tighter and neater and, you know, better design in a way. This is an old classic that never goes out of date. This is about 2 years old. The fact that we are talking about a gimbal that is nearly 2 years old to be just as good as a gimbal that is $100 more and it's only 4 months old, it shows you how good this gimbal is for a smartphone and compact cameras. The ideal gimbal would be would be a mix of these two. If these two would get together and they have a baby, that to me would be the best gimbal. But until then, if ever, it's down to you. I don't know. You know, I'm in a luxury position where I have both gimbals and I can use either one, okay? So if you ask me which one would be in your camera bag, which one would be in my camera bag? This is a question that I hadn't thought about. That's a good question. You know, if you look at this purely from a design point of view, the Crane M3 is the better gimbal and the way to go. It just somehow feels nicer, okay? The G6 Max somehow feels like a design that it's showing a little bit of age, okay? I genuinely do have a problem with this latch here, that it touches the roll axis bar. So there are some things that I do have an issue with. That's a tough question. Which one I would take in my camera bag? I can't decide. I'm sorry, I can't. These two gimbals are really good. You need to make a decision. This is $259, this is $369. This gives you something that this one doesn't, and this gives you something that this one doesn't. And I know that I'm not answering anybody's question here. I think it will come down to price and whether you can afford this one or not. If you can afford the Crane M3, you're gonna love this gimbal, okay? You genuinely are gonna love it. It's a really nice gimbal, okay? If you cannot go to 369, okay, and you can do 259 or that sort of range, don't go anywhere. Take the G6 Max. Obviously, I'm telling you about gimbals that I know about, okay? I don't know about all the other brands. I'm telling you about the gimbals that I know about, okay? This for $259, it's a really good gimbal. You're never gonna have any problems with this gimbal. But if you can afford this one, go for this one. And I think that's as good an answer as I'm gonna give you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not sure whether I've given you any answers or left you wondering with more questions. If I did, I'm really sorry. It's very hard for me to decide on either one of them, and I cannot give you anything other than my honest answer, okay? So I'm really sorry if you have more questions. I've tried my best to at least tell you that this is not a good gimbal. That's something that at least you got something out of this video. But look, if you enjoyed this video, I want to see more of my videos. Smash that like button. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. And trust me when I say this, it genuinely helps. Okay, so if, for instance, you want to watch the review of the Crane M3, I leave a video just about here. And if you want to watch the review of the M2S, I leave the review up here. I really hope I can see you around in my next video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It's really nice to see the numbers going up. And I'll see you in the next video.